He walked into the bakery as a quiet stranger, just another face in the crowd, until one bite of pie exposed a secret so twisted it shook the entire kitchen to its core. Behind the sweet scent of cinnamon and crust, something dark was rising, and what he uncovered would change everything. Stay with us, because this story is baked with truth, betrayal, and a garden that grows more than just herbs. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe and like the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The first snow of March drifted past the dark windows of Honeycomb Haven as dawn tiptoed across Maple Street. Inside the small-town bakery, the ovens were already humming, their orange glow the only light in a room that smelled of butter, cinnamon, and something faintly chemical that no one could quite name. Caleb Murray stood just inside the back entrance, rubbing cold from his hands while his eyes adjusted to the fluorescent glare. He wore a thrift store windbreaker, plain jeans, and wire-rimmed glasses. Nothing about him hinted at the national awards he once won for artisan bread, or the magazine covers that had praised his golden crust revolution. That was the point. This morning he was simply Cale, the newest hire, here to sweep floors, portion fillings. And listen, Haley, a 19-year-old, with pink headphones hanging around her neck, handed him a yellow apron. "Lockers are past the walk-in," she muttered, never quite meeting his eyes. Her name tag read Haley Trainee 6 months, but the weary slump of her shoulders made her seem older. Caleb offered a thanks. She only shrugged and hurried back to the register, as if words were rationed and she had spent too many already. Steel tables formed a neat grid across the prep room, each one wiped so clean it looked unused. Yet every corner held crates and tubs stacked in precise piles, taped shut and printed with bold black codes. Lot 4512, Lot 4513, Lot 4514. No supplier name, no farm logo, no comforting phrase like handpicked, only numbers. Caleb felt a quiet alarm flicker behind his ribs. Real food always carried a story. These boxes carried secrets. Juan, a broad-shouldered baker with flour dusting his beard, waved Caleb over. "They put you with me," he said in a low voice. "We're portioning cherry today. Grab a scooper." "Shh." Juan's friendly tone clashed with the caution in his eyes. Caleb sensed he measured every word. The first task seemed harmless. Open a tub, weigh the filling, spoon it into pastry shells. Caleb lifted the lid. A rush of red gel sloshed forward, glossy, too sweet even for cherries, the scent sharp and artificial. He pretended to cough to hide his frown.
"Under the hum of
the walk-in cooler," he whispered. "Does that smell right to you?" Juan's scoop paused midair. "Don't ask," he murmured. "Just do the weight and keep moving." Mid-morning brought the customer rush. At 8:05 a.m. precise, the bell above the front door rang like a starter's pistol. Ani, a slim barista, with auburn curls plastered on a smile, and chirped, "Welcome to Honeycomb Haven." Yet her eyes darted toward the glass case, checking that the trays were full of perfect crimson turnovers. Caleb carried a fresh pan forward and felt dozens of glances on his back. Customers eager for comfort, staff praying the crusts wouldn't crack. A manager named Claire, tapping figures into a tablet. Caleb slid the pan onto the shelf and slipped a sample slice onto a small plate, perk of being new. He stepped aside, raised the fork, and let the filling touch his tongue. Sweetness smacked him first, then a metallic aftertaste that clung like cold pennies. No tart snap of real cherry, no whisper of vanilla, only syrup and chemicals. He chewed, slowly smiled politely, and swallowed every wrong note. He needed proof. During a lull, he pulled his phone from his apron pocket, pretending to wipe flour off the case. Camera shutter silent. He captured photos, the unmarked tubs, the lot codes. The clipboard, where Claire had just checked off a delivery labeled only alt vendor. He texted each shot to Asha Lee, his contact at head office. Seconds later, a bubble popped up. "Not on approved list. Keep digging." Lunchtime neared. Celeste Hart finally arrived, gliding through the staff door like a queen entering court. She wore a gray wool coat and a honeycomb pin that caught the light. Her smile was flawless, her handshake practiced, but her gaze felt colder than the freezer. Caleb watched from the sink as she signed for another delivery to more plain boxes wheeled in. By a driver whose face stayed hidden under a cap, Celeste never glanced at the contents. She only locked the freezer herself and slipped the clipboard into her bag. Afterward, she gathered staff for a pep talk. "Efficiency is excellence," she said, voice warm as whipped cream. "Customers, taste our joy, so we keep distractions out. Phones on silent. Questions through proper channels." Her eyes scanned the circle, daring anyone to resist. No one did. When the shift ended, Caleb changed in silence, but before leaving, he stopped at Juan's locker. "Why stay if the filling's wrong?" he asked. Juan tied his scarf slowly. "Rent's due," he said. "My boy's asthma meds aren't cheap. Besides, nobody listens." Caleb squeezed his shoulder. Someone is listening now. In the cold parking lot, Caleb climbed into a dented Ford. He didn't drive away. Instead, he angled the rearview mirror toward the alley. 5 minutes later, the same delivery van reappeared, engine low, headlights off. He filmed it all. Boxes moved under the dim bulb. Celeste's silhouette signing a fresh slip. The driver speeding off before anyone inside could notice. When his phone buzzed, Asha's message glowed on the screen. Trace shows payments too. A shell company. Founder will want details. Caleb started the car, heart thumping like a mixer on high. "The crust ain't just crust," his grandmother had said. "It's a promise in flour." Tonight that promise had crumbled, but he knew the recipe. For truth. Began with listening, with pictures, with whispers in the kitchen. The winter storm that had threatened the town all week finally rolled in the next morning, draping Honeycomb Haven in a hush of white that softened every sound but sharpened every scent. Caleb arrived before sunrise, his boots crunching over. Fresh snow, his breath fogging against the back door glass. Inside, the kitchen lights flickered on one by one, revealing rows of gleaming mixers and empty trays waiting to be filled. It should have felt calm. Instead, the air buzzed with a nervous energy that raised the hairs on Caleb's arms. By 6:30, the crew had gathered, wrapped in wool scarves and half-finished yawns. Claire, the assistant manager, unlocked the freezer for the first pull of the day. The stamp on the newest delivery tub read Lot 4520. Caleb could almost hear a clock start ticking in his chest. This was the batch corporate auditors would never see, unless he made certain they did. He moved to the mixing station beside Juan, who had dark circles under his eyes and fresh flour smudged on his cheek. "Late night?" Caleb asked quietly, pretending to measure sugar. Juan gave the barest nod. "Celeste called me in after. Close wanted the cherry line double prepped for some special order. Wouldn't say who placed it." He lowered his voice further. "She's pushing harder. Says head office will be impressed." Caleb's response was a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. While Juan poured the filling into a stainless bowl, Caleb slid a small plastic vial from his apron. One discreet scoop, and the vial disappeared again. Sample secured. Near 7:15, the overnight snowplows rumbled down Maple Street, and the first customer mail carrier in a blue parka stomped through the front door, asking for a slice of whatever smells like childhood. Annie sliced into the cherry pie cooling near the register and served it on a paper plate. The mail carrier's sigh of delight drifted all the way to the kitchen, followed by a satisfied taste like summer. Caleb felt his stomach twist. If only taste buds told the whole truth. Right before the morning rush peaked, Fortune knocked loud enough for everyone to hear. Claire's phone rang and her face lit up like someone had flicked a switch inside her. She whispered into the receiver, eyes darting toward Celeste's office, then hurried to the prep area. "Listen up," she said, clapping her hands. "Corporate is running a surprise promotion. The influencer foodie Nora just posted she's driving through town and wants to film here. If she likes us, we get featured on her channel tonight. That's millions of views. Boss wants everything sparkly." Gasps bubbled across the room. Even Juan straightened. Foodie Nora was famous for turning small eateries into overnight sensations. One positive review could triple revenue in a week. Claire thrust a clipboard toward Caleb. "You're new but precise. Decorate the display pie. Perfect lattice, extra shine. We've got 90 minutes." The bakery erupted into motion. Haley set the playlist to upbeat jazz. Annie brewed a fresh pot of single origin coffee. Juan rolled dough with the focus of a sculptor. Caleb kept his movements steady, braiding dough strips into an impeccable lattice. While brushing on the finishing glaze, he checked his phone under the table. A single text from Asha. Lab found high levels of synthetic stabilizer.
Fact confirmed.
Unsafe. Secure physical proof. Secure proof? Serve a flawless pie? And host internet royalty all before 10-a.m. Caleb breathed through his nose. Let the cinnamon-laced air clear his thoughts, and carried on. At 9:45, a sleek black SUV eased up to the curb, cameras visible through its tinted windows. Foodie Nora stepped out wearing a bright yellow coat, her smile as wide as the sky. Claire greeted her with practiced warmth while Celeste, summoned from her office, floated forward in a tailored blazer, radiating quiet authority.
Oh.
Nora's crew swept in with lights and microphones. They filmed the pastry case, the latte art, the snow-dusted street through the window, curated for charm. When Nora asked for the house specialty, Claire gestured proudly at Caleb's cherry masterpiece. Annie plated a generous slice and handed it over. The influencer lifted her fork, and every employee stilled. One bite of thoughtful chew, then her eyes widened. "Wow, that's glossy," she said, struggling to stay polite. "Almost like a cherry candy." Claire's smile faltered. Nora's face shifted from polite curiosity to subtle alarm. She brought the fork closer, sniffed, then glanced toward the camera. "Do you mind if I see the kitchen? My followers love behind-the-scenes moments." Celeste's lips tightened a fraction, but she nodded. Of course. While cameras rolled, Nora stepped into the prep area. Juan wiped his hands. Annie smoothed her apron, and Caleb stood beside the newest filling tub lot, 4,520, his heart hammering. Nora pointed to it. "Is that the cherry base?" Celeste interjected, "Proprietary blend, can't share sourcing." But Nora's brow rose. The lens zoomed in on the unbranded container, the suspicious code, the glistening red surface beneath clear plastic. Fortune had knocked, and with one unedited frame it threatened to blow the door clean off. Celeste tried to laugh. "Our secret ingredient is love, of course." But her voice wavered. Caleb seized the moment. "Actually," he said, loud enough for the microphone, "I keep the supplier information on file. Transparency's our real secret." He lifted the lid, letting the camera capture the unnaturally thick syrup. Gasps rippled through the crew. Nora's producer mouthed, "Cut," but the cameraman kept rolling, sensing a bigger story. Celeste's face drained of color.
Ow.
Claire stepped back as if distance might spare her. Caleb held the tub aloft, red ooze catching the studio light. Proof shimmering for millions to judge. This batch arrived off schedule and unlabeled. He continued, voice steady. "We deserve to know what we're serving." In that frozen second, the bakery's fate teetered between viral fame and viral shame. Fortune had indeed knocked, but it offered two doors, one to quick, hollow glory, and another to painful, necessary truth. Caleb waited, holding the evidence, as cameras captured every heartbeat of silence. The video clip hit the internet by lunchtime and by dinner time. Honeycomb Haven's inbox was flooded with questions, warnings, and confused concern. Foodie Nora hadn't said much on her feed, just posted a still shot of the pie, the syrup, oozing unnaturally beneath the glaze with a single word beneath it, investigating. That one post spread like wildfire. Inside the bakery, the air was heavy. Nobody played music that morning. Customers came in quiet, many just peering through the window and walking away. The usual warmth had been replaced with caution. Behind the counter, Claire tried to stay composed, but her hands trembled when she counted change. Caleb stood by the dish sink, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing harder than necessary. He hadn't been fired. Not yet. Celeste hadn't said a word to him. Since the video incident, and she hadn't shown up that morning at all. Claire, now acting manager, avoided eye contact with everyone. Just before noon, a courier arrived. He handed Caleb a small white envelope. No name on it, only the bakery's address typed cleanly across the front. Caleb tore it open at his locker. Inside was a single folded page and a note in tight, sharp handwriting. "You don't know what you've started. But it's too late now, see?" He turned over the page. Stapled to it was a copy of a vendor form. Not just any form, one bearing Celeste's signature and a payment record for a company named Farm Fusion Co. He checked the payment routing number and felt his stomach drop. It didn't lead to a farm. It led to a shell account, likely offshore. Whoever Farm Fusion was, they weren't producing cherries. Caleb scanned the rest of the document. Down at the bottom was something even more shocking. A second signature line with a scribbled name, Claire. His jaw clenched when he stepped back into the kitchen. Claire was spooning batter into cupcake liners, her movements automatic. "Want to talk about this?" he asked, holding up the paper. She froze. "I didn't think you'd actually get involved," she whispered after a long silence. I thought you'd just keep your head down like the others." "Claire, you signed off on this." She nodded. "I did. Because she told me we'd lose the store if we didn't cut costs. She said the ingredients were industry standard, that no one would notice. And they didn't. Until you." Caleb stared at her. "You think that makes it okay?" "I think survival makes people do things they hate themselves for," she snapped. "You think this place was built on ethics?" "It was built on fear, and pretending the frosting was real." The words stung, but she wasn't wrong. The truth had been hiding behind pretty menus and fake fruit for a long time. "Where's Celeste?" he asked. "Probably lawyered up," Claire muttered. "She doesn't lose. At least she didn't before." That afternoon, corporate sent an email. Short and cold. Effective immediately. Honeycomb Haven is under internal audit. All operations suspended until further notice. The fight had begun. The team was sent home. The ovens turned off, and the lights dimmed. But Caleb didn't leave. Instead, he gathered every receipt he'd kept, every photo he'd taken, and laid them out in the empty dining room like puzzle pieces. When Juan came back with 2 thermoses of coffee, he didn't ask questions. He just sat down and started helping. By nightfall, Maria, Annie, and even the part-time dishwasher, Frankie, had joined them.
Oh.
None of them knew what would happen next, but all of them wanted the same thing. Answers. "We need a name," Maria said, "for who's really behind this." Caleb pulled up his laptop and typed in the payment tracking number again. This time, with Claire's help, they found a connection. Farm Fusion Co. was listed as a subcontractor under a parent group, Sunspire Limited. Sunspire, in turn, had one listed board member, Nathaniel Roberts. Caleb read aloud. Loud. "That," Frankie raised his hand. "Wait, isn't that Celeste's brother-in-law? He came in once for a holiday tasting, brought a huge camera, said he was in food marketing." They dug deeper. Nathaniel's name appeared on several food safety inspection waivers across the state. Many signed during the same month. Celeste's discount ingredients began arriving. The paper trail was real, dangerous. The fight now had a face. Caleb sent everything to a food safety attorney named Lena, who had represented whistleblowers in the past. He wrote in the subject line, "Urgent ingredient fraud and vendor. Concealment, full evidence attached." "Within hours," she replied. "Received. Stay put." This just became bigger than your store. The next morning, a news van parked across the street. The reporter knocked at the closed glass doors. Notebook in hand, camera crew behind her. Caleb opened the door, nervous but steady. "We heard there's something going on with your ingredients," she said, "something not legal." "There's a story here," Caleb said, "but not just about fake cherries. It's about people trying to do the right thing and being told to stay quiet." "Well, we're done being quiet." He let her in. As the interview began, the crew filmed the labeled tubs. The audit notice taped on the wall, and the notes Caleb had saved. When the reporter asked why he had stayed when others looked the other way, Caleb didn't flinch. "Because good food should never come with lies," he said. And because one letter told me everything I needed to know that truth scares people who depend on secrets. Outside, customers gathered, not for pies, but to listen. Inside, Caleb stood. Taller, the fight was just beginning. But now he wasn't alone. The first daffodils bloomed behind the bakery where the old garden plot had once been forgotten. Tiny yellow faces peeked through the soft earth, pushing past the weeds and dried leaves. The garden had been nothing but a patch of dirt for years left. Behind, when the first renovation paved over what used to be the community herb bed, but now it had life again. Caleb stood near the back door of Honeycomb Haven, wearing work gloves and a hoodie with the sleeves rolled up. Beside him, Maria knelt with a trowel, carefully planting rosemary cuttings from her grandmother's kitchen. Frankie lugged bags of compost from a local farm, and Annie arranged rows of small wooden signs labeled with the names of each herb. They weren't bakers today. They were builders. The bakery had reopened just a week ago, not with a grand celebration or a ribbon-cutting ceremony, but with quiet dignity and the scent of real apples and hand-rolled dough. No more shortcuts. No more lies in crust and sugar. Every batch was made from scratch, every ingredient clearly labeled and displayed on the new community board inside. Lena, the attorney, had stayed close throughout the process. Her support and guidance had helped Caleb and the team navigate the legal whirlwind after the truth came out. Celeste had been officially removed from operations, and the board had issued a public apology. The investigation into Sunspire Limited was ongoing, but arrests had already begun. Nathaniel Roberts was facing charges, and more were expected. Inside, the bakery was full again. Families gathered at the tables, students studied over cups of herbal tea, and children pointed excitedly at the pie display, which now had simple notes like "made with love, not chemicals." It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Just in honesty. Caleb knew was something you had to grow like a garden. Claire had stepped down quietly. She returned one day after the chaos settled and offered Caleb a letter and a jar of her homemade marmalade. "I wasn't brave," she said, "but I'm sorry." He'd accepted the gift without a word, just a nod. Forgiveness, like trust, didn't come all at once. But the fact she returned, that she didn't run it, meant something. Behind the counter now hung a framed sheet of paper, the very first audit report after the cleanup. Across the bottom, in clean, bold ink, it read, "Compliant, certified." Below it, they'd placed another sign, written in Maria's handwriting. "The crust is our promise. The filling is our truth." The new menu featured fewer items, but every one of them had a story. The cinnamon was sourced from a small cope. The apples came from a nearby orchard, and the herbs soon would come from the back garden where they could be seen, touched, and even picked by customers who asked. The garden became more than a symbol, became part of the bakery's heart. Maria brought her daughter on weekends, teaching her how to identify thyme and basil. Frankie built a small bench from reclaimed wood, carving names into the slats, one for each person who stayed and fought. Annie started a weekly community tea class, where she brewed drinks using fresh mint and lemon balm, letting guests sip while talking about what trust meant in a place like theirs. Even customers joined in. One retired teacher donated seed packets. Another woman brought sunflowers to plant along the fence. A young boy named Toby drew a sign in crayon, "Honeycomb Garden Bees Welcome." Caleb never forgot the fear that once filled the kitchen, but it didn't own the space anymore. Now, when he walked through the bakery, he heard laughter. Real laughter. He saw people asking questions, offering ideas, speaking without looking, over their shoulders. One afternoon, he stood by the oven, watching dough rise in the warm air, when a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Mrs. Hannigan, the school teacher who had once given him his first cookbook as a boy. She was older now, slower in her steps, but her eyes still sparkled with curiosity. "I saw the news," she said softly. "I wasn't sure if you were the same Caleb who used to burn oatmeal cookies in my after-school club." He laughed. "Still guilty of that sometimes?" She stepped inside and looked around. "You built this?" "We all did," he said, motioning to the kitchen team. She nodded slowly, taking it all in. "You turned a place of secrets into a place of growth." Caleb thought about that. about how it started with one bad pie and turned into a battle for something bigger. He walked her to the back garden, where the thyme had just begun to bloom. The sun caught on the rosemary leaves and bees danced lazily in the warm breeze. "Every good thing," he said, "starts with a seed and a little light." Mrs. Hannigan smiled and patted his arm. A lot of courage. As the sun set over the rooftop, painting everything gold and soft, Caleb returned to the kitchen. He took off his gloves, washed his hands, and helped Maria load pies into the case. Outside, the garden kept growing, reaching toward the sky. Because where the lies had once rooted, truth now blossomed. At this time, nothing could stop it.